In this video, we're going to show you how to paint gold on a Space Marine. This lesson is part of our painting series tutorials for anyone that's taking part in our Knights of the Game Table Painting Challenge. If you want to learn how you can join into the challenge and get some miniatures painted and get a free Knights of the Game Table membership for an entire month, then click the link in the description of this video and sign up now. Now, let's start painting some gold.
Okay, so we've applied the red armor, the blue on the shield, we have bones, we have leather. Now it's time to get to metals. So we're gonna get our nice fine tip brush. You see here, there's many methods to get a nice tip on a brush. Some people like to use the crease in their hands. Some people get those nice Citadel pots and use the creases in the pot. Some people use their mouth and just suck on the brush to give it a nice tip. I know that's what Adam at Knights of the Game Table does. So you really want to make sure you have a nice tip for this. We're going to use the retributer armor for our gold painting now. So give it a nice shake. You want to make sure you shake those up because it has the metal pigments, and we are good to go now. So the way we're going to do this one is we're going to put a little bit of a nice splat on the wet palette here so we can have a little more control over what we're picking up onto our brush. So with metals, you want to handle with a little bit more care. There is like metal pigments, which can if you make mistakes, it can get a little more, risky, but it's really fun. So here we go. We're going to start by finding where we're going to touch up the model, right? So with this model specifically, I know one of the first things everyone eyes up for Space Marines is the edge around the shoulder pad. We have that little, spot around the shoulder pad. So we're going to come back to the shoulder pad after that. But first thing we're going to do is hit that breastplate. Space Marines, they have these nice, beautiful winged breastplates, especially Blood Angels. They love their angel wings. So we're just going to knock out the breastplate first and get that done. Now, this paint is not a contrast paint. It's it's almost like got the consistency of a base paint. It's a metallic paint. So it's a little thicker. It's more rich in terms of color and pigment. So you don't need to apply it the same way. You can get just a little bit of the paint over the tip of the brush and apply it just nice and smoothly. So you don't need to get as technical as you do with contrast paints because of the thickness of the paint. So next we're gonna just cover up, the belt buckle. We're gonna go to all these little metal bits and pieces. So again, just a nice little tip of gold paint on the tip of the brush and touch these up. It's almost like sharpening a colored pencil, really, really, really sharp, so it has a nice fine point, and then just lightly grazing the edge of where you want to paint. So applying gold, people get intimidated by it, but it's actually quite easy because you're just filling it in. And again, with the grayscale, it makes it even easier. Now, the grayscale isn't going to have as much of an effect for gold paint as it does with the contrast paint because it's thicker, but that's okay because as we go through this lesson, we're going to show you our method for adding more shades and texture to gold to give it a glowing effect and everything. Now, we're getting the sword hilt, we're getting all the different pieces of the sword, not the blade. The blade's going to be a steel color, and we'll cover that in one of the next lessons on doing steel and silver and those kind of metallic colors, the cooler ones. Gold is actually considered a hot color, so that's one of the reasons it looks so good as we're applying it, is because red is also a hot color. So gold goes really good with red. They actually love each other. So if you have opportunities to put gold on red, it's a good thing. So I mean, that's why just right out the gate we haven't even applied any of the shades or other effects to make this gold stand out, and it's just standing out on its own because we've applied it with the red armor. So we got the sword hilt, we're just touching up these finer details. Now we noticed something here, we forgot to paint the handle of the sword. So we're going to go back, we're going to get our snakebite leather and give this sword a leather handle. That's okay, as you go through things, you may notice you miss a spot or two. So you just get a nice a nice tip on your brush and bust out the paint you need and fix them as you go. We like to do it section by section, but sometimes you just miss something and you'll have to go back and do it, and that's totally fine. So What you don't want to do is avoid it, get to the completed finished version of the model and have a white spot that's going to be way more risky to repair once everything's fixed. So we went back, we fixed our handle. Now we're going to do our trim on the shoulder pad of this Space Marine. Now, Space Marines typically, have different trims for their shoulder pads. Because he has the red armor, we're going to go with gold. Again, gold blends well with red, so we're going gold with this. And Blood Angels love their red and gold, and etc. Now we're being a little more meticulous with this shoulder pad because, again, we're getting it near the face, we're getting it near the head, and we don't want to get anything on the face or head. That is the one area that you have all rights to, get upset about if you paint it. Now, it's not a big deal, you can fix it, but they are a pain to fix. So you want to make sure you're extremely careful when you're painting around the face or the head of your model. Again, we're going to handle this with care, using all 5 fingers on one hand, using another finger to steady it, and we're just going to touch up the edge of this shoulder pad because we're, going to get it different. We're going to touch up the gold seal, the gold piece on his arm, and just get this guy really decked out in his gold. And all we're doing here is laying the base of the retributer armor gold, so that way we can get our next piece on that's gonna really make the gold stand out. So iron halo, we're gonna get that covered. We're gonna, fill in all those creases, all those crevices with the retributer gold, and make sure that we, just the main goal here is to not have white. If you don't have any white on the model, then you're doing good. You don't want to overpaint it now, so keep in mind there's a lot of back and forth here. We're not just getting all these done in one foul swoop. A lot of people will tend to overpaint in terms of slapping up too much paint to their brush so that they don't have to keep replenishing the paint. And you'll see here, we're going back and forth. There's a lot of add paint, go back, add paint, go back, add paint, go back. And that's how painting's supposed to be done. It's very meticulous. It's very patient oriented. So, you got to get paint on the tip of the brush, get these nice little fine spots, but you don't want to overpaint those spots because when you go to touch them up, it's going to show and you're going to see it more than anyone else. And that's really what deters so many people from painting is they see their mistakes and they can't stand it. I'm the same way. I can't stand it. So patience is one of the biggest keys to painting, and it's really about being okay with reapplying the tip to your brush, reapplying small bits of paint to your brush. So now we're going to cross over into touching up the gold and giving it a cool glow effect. We love to use wrinkled flesh shade for this. It's another Citadel paint, it's a shade paint, and it loves gold. Wrinkled flesh shade and gold are go hand in hand. They are the best combo in terms of adding a brightness and a glow to your gold colors, especially because this gold specifically is on red armor. So if a little bit of this, shade spills over onto the red armor, it's totally fine because it's going to give the red armor a little bit of a glow as well. Now that doesn't mean oversaturate your brush. Again, you can see we're going back and forth here, putting a little bit on, applying it, putting a little bit on, applying it, and keeping our point and tip on the brush itself. And yeah, so we are applying, the wrinkled flesh shade all over these different places. The sword hilt, the bottom of the handle, and, eventually we're going to move into these other harder to reach places. Another cool thing about the wrinkled flesh shade is that it drips a lot like contrast paint, where it goes downward and fills in the cracks. So this is one of those more wet paints where gravity does some of the work for you, and you can apply it and just watch as the magic happens. The key here is just don't over apply it. So again, back and forth, we're putting some on the tip, we're putting some on the brush, and we're going back to it. So we're gonna get the iron halo here, apply the wrinkled flesh shade to that, and get it over the entire thing. So this is one of those instances where we've really done it. Now that we did the armor, we're gonna apply gold to the shield. Now this is a little more meticulous. The skeleton here has an iron halo, a nice golden halo, so we're gonna give him that gold speck as well. And this is very, very tricky because we're not going over the red. We have to be a little slower, a little more careful, because this is gold going over the blue, which is a more cooler color, and you don't want those two to combine. You want to keep that line, that stark contrast, so that way both colors stand out and they look really, really good. Now the hourglass here has a little bit of a gold trim to it. It's got that gold frame for the hourglass that the skeleton's holding. We're just gonna get it nice and carefully, apply a nice, little bit of gold paint to our tip and get that part painted up. So you can see how, you start applying the metal and the colors really start to pop on this shield. So that's one of the really cool things about, doing this. The next thing we're gonna do is this gold trim on the shield itself. So again, we're going hot metal color, which is gold, over the more delicate cool color, which is blue. So just being very careful, holding the model with all 5 fingers on one hand and using the other finger to steady it. If you need to get a paintbrush holder, there is no shame in that. A lot of people do, especially, for bigger models. This model does have a bigger base specifically, and we do a lot of painting here at night, so we have a pretty good grip on how to hold models. But yeah, just want to make sure you're holding it in all the right places, and it's really just smoothing down like that, getting a nice line so you aren't having to scramble and apply paint. If you can apply paint in streaks and just get a nice little streak of paint across the area you need to get colored, then your models are going to really start to stand out. So we did the front of the trim. Now we're going to do the edge and the side, and just get that nice and colored in to where you can see the nice gold border. It's all around the shield and the model. So we really want to apply that gold in the best way possible to where it has a nice stark contrast with the blue, but also, looks good with his red hands holding on to it. And it's just all about being careful. It's just really just be careful, be meticulous, apply, the paint little by little, and you'll see that your models will come a long way. It's just carve out that time to set aside and apply paint slowly, apply paint carefully, and you'll see here in these hard to reach places where we got to slow it down. We got to make sure our brush has a tip. We got to go back and put a little bit more paint on the tip because maybe we didn't put enough. It's so much back and forth, and that's the stuff people don't want to do. That's the stuff that makes your models really look good. And once you get in the routine, once you get we call it muscle memory, to where you're painting and your hand muscles and your arm muscles just have that reflex of going back and forth, you'll start to see it's really not that hard. So we're going to touch up the back of the trim here on the shield, get that back area colored in. So we have the gold trim going all around the shield, and getting it nice and bright to where the shield catches an eye, because it is the centerpiece essentially. That is like the big feature that the Space Marine is literally holding in your face. So we want to make sure we make it look good and we make it look right. So now for the final piece of the gold, we're gonna get the gold trim of the other shoulder pad. We were kind of avoiding that because we wanted to get the rest of it and show you how to go around while also touching up that piece that that red paint blotched onto and ended up getting a little bit of a boo-boo on the shoulder pad there. So we're being extremely careful as we get the edge of this shoulder pad, because the end goal here is to keep this shoulder pad white and have it, looking really good with a decal piece and all that cool stuff. So we'll cover that on how to apply the decals and get your shoulder pieces looking really bright and white for that later on in this video series. But for now, we're just applying the gold. Of course, next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to touch up the gold with the wrinkled flesh shade, so that way it gets a nice bright glow to it. Again, because we're going over the blue, we're being a little more careful now. With the red, we were going a little faster. We were actually okay with it spilling into the red armor a little bit, because wrinkled flesh shade loves hot colors like red and gold. But because we're getting that iron halo over the blue, we're slowing it down. We're being a little more meticulous, and we are applying it just on the tip of the brush. We're just, getting the edges of the shield, getting the edges of the model, and we'll slow it down a little bit here and make sure that we can cover, what we need to in terms of the gold, but we do not want to have that wrinkled flesh shade spilling into the blue. Now, if it spills a little bit, that's okay. It actually adds, some of that glow effect. It's just, it doesn't blend as well with blue as it does with the red. So that's why we're taking it a little slower, being a little more meticulous, but as you can see, this is a fast process, and it's that little step of going back over the gold with something like a shade that makes it really stand out and look good. So we finished up the gold here. As you can see, it's starting to look good. The shield's really starting to come together. The gold looks good on the red, and now we're gonna move into steel and silver with the cooler colors. So I'm excited to share that with you.
And that concludes how to paint gold on a Space Marine. The next thing we're going to cover is silver and steel, like the big shiny sword that he's holding in his hand. If you want to learn more about that, then make sure to follow along with this tutorial series. And if you haven't already, make sure to register for our Knights of the Game Table Painting Challenge. There's a link in the description of this video that you can click on and register to join us. If you go through this entire painting series and show us that you painted a model from start to finish using the techniques that we're sharing with you in this video series, then we will give you a full month of access to our Knights of the Game Table membership completely free. All you have to do is register and complete the challenge. It's that simple. So if you haven't registered already, then go ahead and click the link and do that. If you're already with us in the painting challenge, then I will see you in the next video.